and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the
Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Please be seated. Item 2 is the invocation. For that, our friend, Rabbi Mordecai Griffin.
It's my honor to be here. Let us pray. Adonai, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you. I pray, Adonai, that you should grant wisdom to the mayor, to the city council, to all of our officials here in this city, and to us citizens of this city, that we should do your work with grace, with mercy, with knowledge, with insight, because it is you, Adonai, who grants insight to mortal men. Bless our police officers, our firefighters, our first responders. Bless everyone in this city, from the greatest to the smallest, that we might be a shining light for you to produce your glory on the earth. In the merit of the Messiah, Yeshua, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. Item number 3 is audience participation. That's on the video screen. Please silence your cell phones, devices, so we can have a good meeting. I'd also like to welcome those folks that are watching us online on the screen. I hope you can see and hear us well. Please let us know about the video quality and the audio. We hope we have a few people enjoying this online. Item number 4 is the consent agenda. A is action regarding minutes of April 2nd. B is action regarding Resolution 2019-09 to deny the distribution cost recover factor associated application filed by Encore. C is action regarding acceptance of street right-of-way dedication for Worthy Street. D, action regarding approval of individual project order with Kimley Horn Associates for McElroy Boulevard curb and gutter replacement. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull C and D for a brief discussion.
C and D?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I will entertain a motion for A and B.
So move.
Patrick? David? Valerie, second? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Let the record reflect we do have a quorum this evening. So item C, action regarding acceptance of street right-of-way dedication. Rick Trice.
Yes, sir, Mayor. This is in conjunction with a requirement that staff made to Racetrack, who's developing the north end of their property. It's going to be an unmanned diesel fuel station. We require them to widen Worthy Street along the frontage of their property from existing width to a 40-foot wide roadway. And all of that right-of-way is going to come off their property. So that's what this deed accomplishes, is the dedication of that right-of-way.
So we just want to confirm Racetrack's intent is to service 18-wheeler traffic.
It is. We've had several discussions on it, which is part of the reason for widening that roadway. We've also tried to configure those driveways. In fact, we had a debate, a dialogue back and forth with the Texas Department of Transportation, who controls that access, being a state highway. They were not receptive to our request to widen that driveway to an extra wide width. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be kind of a wait and see and respond if it becomes unmanageable or increasing incidents at those intersections.
So what kind of recourse do we have if they do delay the widening of that right-of-way along TxDOT, say, for the next 10 years? And I'm concerned that since they've denied doing that, we're really going to be stuck with a problem with trucks entering the roadway that close to our McElroy intersection.
We are. Again, we petitioned them on really 3 different occasions to try to get them, at least at the at the area level, Mr. Tran, who's the area engineer, to be receptive to that driveway width. And so I think TxDOT hears us loud and clear. I think that they probably would be receptive if there was some large increase in incidents at that intersection. You do have a similar fueling station, Saginaw. We have a similar fueling station down the street at the Circle K, the old Valero. And there really are limited incidents there that we understand. This is a much more congested intersection, so it'll just be again. I think the engineer described, and I agree. Proof will be in the pudding at the end of the day, whether or not it operates smoothly.
And as I understand it, the Valero station really does not accommodate 53-foot tractor trailer. It's more of a bobtail service station.
There are tractor trailers that use that facility. Mm-hmm. So, But how many, I don't know. I think this will be probably heavily used just because it's easily accessible, and it's going to be an expansive parking lot and fueling station. I mean, you can see the size of the vacant lot to the north of the existing facility.
So by granting the right-of-way and allowing Racetrack to develop at this point, do we lose lobbying strength with Racetrack's pockets on TxDOT?
I think Racetrack at least have indicated to me, of course, 5 years down the road, there's going to possibly be different people, but the commitment is there today to deal with the problem if there is an issue. They have an individual out of Grapevine that serves as kind of a lobbyist with the district here in Fort Worth, and he's been very, very successful. Of course, he was also the one that lobbied for the wider driveway. So, but I think that they would be receptive as a public entity or a partner to come back and do changes to the driveway if TxDOT were to allow it. I mean, we're kind of at, the problem is they're permitted by right. So what we're trying to do is give the best development scenario that we can, and we tried again to petition TxDOT to take it beyond that. And so now we're just at a point where we need to move on with it and see how it works.
I don't like leaving it up to fate and incident to prompt TxDOT to make a change. I would much rather put the pressure on the developer to maybe lobby that TxDOT do that rather than we put that at the risk of our citizens.
They've lobbied heavily, and we've lobbied. I've lobbied personally with their district, like I said, on 3 different occasions, and had 3 no's. So, I don't know what else to do at this point other than move the project forward and then see how it operates. It's hard to say that that's an unsafe scenario with TxDOT since they're taking the totally opposite viewpoint of it, that it is a safe operation that meets their guidelines. They're not living with it day to day. They're not enforcing the traffic along the boulevard. So,
How many pumps are they going to put in?
I believe there's 8, if I remember, 6 to 8. 6 to 8, but they're unmanned. So it'll be just,
Chief Howell, what is the police department's view on 18-wheelers or big trucks entering that close to the traffic light?
Captain Johnson looked at that extensively during the design phase of it, and we were not real enthused about the layout of it. And the lack of like Rick said, about the lack of the entrance width and the turnaround radius inside the parking lot. So I think under the current design, it could create some issues for us.
I will add that shoulder adjacent to Racetrack in that vicinity is wide enough to accommodate the vehicle in a queue. Of course, people use that shoulder for a right turn lane to McElroy, so there is opportunity for conflict there. But
So, Brent, is this a legislative or ministerial action that we're taking tonight?
You have discretion whether or not to accept the dedication.
Mr. Mayor, can we separate C from D, because I see a reason that I would not be able to vote for C. I don't want to combine the two.
Yeah, let's handle them individually. Do we want to, any more discussion on C? Questions on C? If not, then I'll entertain a motion on C only.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we deny the request to move forward the right-of-way at Worthy Street as described in item C of the consent agenda.
All right, second. Mary, second. All right, all those, please repeat the.
Okay, it is to deny moving forward with the right-of-way as described in item C of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, all those in favor of this motion, raise your hand. Raise your right hand. Opposed? Did you vote?
No.
Okay. Abstain? Okay. All right, thank you, Rick. Item D, action regarding approval of individual project order with Kimley Horn & Associates for McElroy curb and gutter replacement. Again, that's Rick Trice.
yes, sir, Mayor, Council. This item I briefly talked about at the last council meeting. with the upcoming bond issue and some of the needs that have been identified in the city, East McElroy was one of those items. We think that we can get a pavement section built in McElroy using contract and county forces that would give us a 20-year life on that roadway. Just on the horizon, we're not sure that we'll have sufficient bond capacity to support both Knowles park improvements and facility improvements. So I think that this approach would allow us to get some additional life out of McElroy serviceability. What the plan is to have this contract prepared that will do curb and gutter replacement 100% from basically the east right-of-way line of the Mariposa, which is Sansom Boulevard, all the way up to Blue Mound Road. Once the curb and gutter is installed, we'll look at remaining funds and then employ the county to reconstruct that roadway with lime stabilized subgrade, 6 inches of base and 4 inches of asphalt surface. It's my understanding that when the roadway was last constructed, there was no subbase, no subgrade treatment. They basically just overlaid the roadway, so that accounts for the poor, at least partially accounts for the poor condition of that roadway. So that what we're proposing will have a much more serviceable and extended life as compared to that what's out there today. So we think that's probably a good use of funds to extend the life of that pavement and defer that reconstruction to a permanent concrete section for a future bond.
So the only reason I've asked that this be pulled is I know that we're really on a full court press to get our CIP portfolio put together in front of the council. I would like to defer a 20-year improvement on that stretch of road until at least we see what our bonding capacity is and what we can and can't do and what the citizens are willing to pay for. I would hate to invest in what I would consider to be a 20-year Band-Aid, and then 5 years later we have the capacity to just rip it up and put down a concrete surface. So, and if all we've got to do is wait another 4 to 6 months to make that solid 20-year decision, we're just waiting 4 to 6 months to make that decision. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I would say also that this contract has utility and that the form of the contract is basically a unit price replacement or maintenance type of contract. So it could be sidewalk replacement or curb and gutter replacement or driveway replacement. I mean, but the contract would still be there as a tool for us. So I would recommend that we go forward with the IPO, that we have it in hand, and that way we can launch it if we make that decision whenever we formulate the bond package.
But the IPO at this point in time is to pay the engineering firm to design the stretch of roadway that would be...
There's no design. It's just basically a project manual, if you will. So it's just a contract with specifications and unit prices.
So the bidding process would not necessarily occur at this point?
No, and that expense wouldn't occur if we didn't bid it. Obviously, that's not going to be charged to it.
And the construction phase would not be a part of it. Then I have no problem authorizing the $6,500 cost to initiate the design and create the project manual if it looks like we're going to go that direction. But the full $14,000 for the project, I don't know that I'm ready to do that.
I'm looking for Dana to see if she has an issue with that. So, yeah, we can go that route if the council wishes to go.
Yeah, I'd like us to keep this option on the table, so I'm fine moving forward with that in that phased approach.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, council? If not, we'll entertain a motion for D.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve item 4D to allow the engineer to proceed with task number 1, construction document preparation in the amount of $6,500 for the McElroy East project.
I'll second.
David, second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Thank you, Rick. Move forward. Item number 5, recognition of Basel High School Gold Standard Honor Society for their donations to the Saginaw Animal Shelter and Adoption Center. For that, Director of Community Services, Keith Reinhardt.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Rabbi Mordecai spoke so eloquently in his prayer, and one of the things he said was about being a shining star or shining light. And two roles that as a leader is two wonderful roles. Being a leader is recognizing others and serving others. And today, you get to shine a light on some wonderful people who have an amazing heart, amazing caring heart. We were contacted by the Boswell High School Gold Standard Honor Society about making a donation to Saginaw Animal Services and Adoption Center. And on Monday, March the 11th of this year, we received an amazing donation from this group of individuals. I won't read them all, but just to give you an idea, some of the ideas or some of the things that were donated from this group: 164 pounds of dry dog food, 81 pounds of dry cat food, 220 pounds of cat litter, 14 pounds of milk-bone dog treats. That's a bunch. 32 dog toys, 24 pounds of laundry soap. There's a whole list of things that they donated, and I'll tell anyone that listens, our animal services is no different than libraries or anything else. We rely on volunteers to get by and to work. It helps us do our job just like it helps our libraries. And this group of individuals donated a lot of things that every single thing in there, those dogs and cats are benefiting greatly from it. And today I just wanted to allow y'all to recognize this group for what they did.
I guess. Do we want a picture? Yeah. Linda, Nika, do we want a picture? Let's do a picture.
Thank you.
I think they realized it was going to be a long night.
Yeah. Are you surprised they didn't want to stay for the rest of the meeting, Charlie? Go figure. All right, item number 6, Proclamation Emergency Services Week and Annual MedStar Mobile Health Care Update. For that, Fire Chief Doug Spears.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I believe this is the 45th annual nationally recognized EMS Week. It really is to recognize everybody in the field of emergency medical service. For several years, our city has recognized EMS Week through formal proclamation. I believe you have that. We have some senior staff from MedStar here in coordination with the proclamation, and I believe once you read that, they have a quick presentation they would like to do for everybody as well.
Okay. So I'll read the proclamation first. I'll read it in its entirety. So, Proclamation, City of Saginaw. Whereas emergency medical services, EMS, is a vital public service, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas EMS is an important member of the healthcare community, and whereas personnel from MedStar, Saginaw Fire, and Police Department stand ready to provide compassionate, life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of EMS practitioners by designating Emergency Medical Services Week now. Therefore, I, Todd Flippo, Mayor of City of Saginaw, Texas, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 19th to 25th, 2019 as Emergency Medical Services Week with the theme EMS Strong, Beyond the Call. So, thank y'all.
So good evening, and thank you so much for the proclamation and the recognition. My name is Doug Hooten. I'm the CEO for the Authority, better known as MedStar, of which you're a proud owner. So thanks for this opportunity to give you an update from our last year's sort of operations. We do this every year, and we always appreciate the time. With me is our interim medical director, Veer Vithalani. Dr. Vithalani has been with us now a few months now, right? 6 months or so, but he has been with the organization for quite a while. He did his fellowship with us. And so I'm going to let him speak to the actual clinical stuff, but just wanted to give you a quick update on what's been going on with us. And I'd like to say thanks to Chief Spears. He is an incredible person. I'm sure you know that. He chairs our First Responder Advisory Board. He is part of our System Performance Enhancement Group, and he's a personal counselor to me. So when I have these fires that keep happening in my neighborhood, I send them to the chief and say, "What do you think about this?" So, no, great person, and the fire department's amazing. The police department is amazing. We couldn't do this job that we do for the citizens here without them. So they deserve great recognition. Just quick service enhancements. We've increased the number of unit hours we put on the street by 86 a day in the system, which is significant over the years. So I started in 2012, and we peaked at 36 trucks on the street. We now have 51 trucks on the street servicing the service area. So continues to grow, which is a great thing for the cities, and they continue to expand, which is interesting for us. But we keep putting more trucks and more people out on the street. So average response times have stayed pretty consistent, as you can see. Sort of a confusing graph, but it's really the red line that runs through there that are the priority 1 life threats. So about 7.5 minute average response time here in this city. So it stays very consistent. And again, that's why we keep adding unit hours and putting more resource on the street. We are accredited systems, which is a little something you don't find all over the place. So you can see there are about 109 standards that we have to meet for this, and this is our third time to get a perfect score for reaccreditation, so we're very proud of that. There's only about 170 of 17,000 services across the country that actually have this accreditation, and we're one of them. We also renewed our accreditation for our communication center. You can see there's 132 of about 5,800 of those across the country, but only about 26 of the 17,000 have both accreditations, and we have both. So we've renewed both of those again. We survey the customers here and every place that we provide service. It's done by an external organization. We don't do that internally. You can see that the thoughts from those folks rank us pretty high. This is a score up to 100, so we're in a high percentile of that. And this is just some of the scores that come out of that and some of the questions that they ask. And you can see our billing department has managed to get 100%, which is pretty amazing from a billing department since they're asking for money. So we're pretty proud of that too. So I'm going to let Dr. Vithalani talk about our clinical enhancements and performance.
Thank you all for having us. So as Doug mentioned, my job is to focus on the medicine, so actually the care that's provided by our EMTs and paramedics, as well as what happens to them long term, because it's all well and good for an ambulance to show up, but the goal is to take care of everyone and to provide good outcomes. This graph, if you don't understand medicine, is relatively odd. The important thing to understand here is that we set our standards, our clinical standards, extremely high. And so, for example, in the setting of a cardiac arrest where someone's heart has stopped beating, when we are doing chest compressions, actual manual heart compressions, we expect that during the entire course of that care, those chest compressions be done 90% of the time. So the American Heart Association sets that benchmark at anywhere from 60 to 80%. We've measured ourselves against those numbers and absolutely blown them out of the water, and so we set our metrics at 90% because it's shown to improve outcomes. And so what you see here is the percentage of our cardiac arrests that actually meet that extremely high metric. We've done some improvement and have been pretty steady in the high 80s in terms of cases that meet our high benchmark here. The same way, we expect a lot out of our medics when they manage someone's airway. So when someone has stopped breathing and they have to insert a tube to allow the paramedics to breathe for them, we expect them to do so successfully and actually recognize when they've been successful and not successful. And we've done a great job over the past few years to actually diminish the scenarios where tubes are unsuccessful and they go unrecognized, which is an issue across a lot of emergency medical services and thankfully not in our system. And lastly, specific to those patients whose hearts have stopped, we participate in a national registry of patients suffering from that disease to look at what percentage of patients who are suffering from that actually live, and then live in a meaningful way where they're able to stand up and walk out of the hospital and pay their taxes and property taxes, et cetera. And so the blue graph represents our numbers and the orange represents national statistics for the last year. And as you can see, we've been pretty consistently above the national average, not only for last year but for the years previous. So that's all I got.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Bilhag. So as the system moves along, we have to replace infrastructure, obviously. So this is our new ambulances. So you'll see these on the street. If you've seen some of our older ambulances, they have a van front end on them, so they're a little bit smaller. So these are the new Type 1 ambulances. There are lots of improvements in these ambulances, including a liquid ride suspension to soften the suspension, because it's kind of bouncy when you're going down the road. Doing stuff. It has a better air conditioning system for the crews. Actually has 2 air conditioning systems. So we're hoping, we haven't just got these in this year, so we're hoping this summer that we'll get to test those and see how that works out. But we've bought 65 of these over the next 5 years. They're at about $200,000 a copy. So it's a pretty big investment by the system. Just as a frame of reference, there are no tax dollars used to do any of this. This is all done through user fees, which is pretty unheard of around the country. This is what the inside of one looks like. If you would like to see it before you have to see it, this is what it looks like. We continue to do our mobile integrated healthcare, which is leading the nation in being proactive about how and what we do to prevent ambulance calls. I know that seems a little counterproductive maybe because we get paid to transport people to the hospital, but we really believe that the role of healthcare is to help people understand healthcare and help them stay out of the really expensive places and the places where you can really get a good infection, which is in a hospital. So all these programs have been in place for a while now, almost 10 years. And we've had great success. And so 43 Saginaw residents have been involved in one of our programs that we have. And our nurse triage, if you remember when you call 911, if it's low acuity, we send you to a nurse and work with you to try to get you someplace other than an ambulance to an emergency room. So we've had 21 of those calls, with 3 of those actually going someplace other than an emergency room. So those programs continue to be very successful. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the Star Saver program. So this is a great way to save yourself some money. Like everything in healthcare, an ambulance call is expensive and isn't always covered by the insurance the way that you think it would be. So for $69, this covers your household for a year, everyone in your household, and will help prevent you from getting that unexpected balance bill. And you've heard so much about balance billing probably on the news, and there's a lot of legislation right now to deal with balance billing. This stops balance billing for you. So for $69, you can eliminate any thought that you would get a balance bill for a 911 call. So we encourage you to do this. We did look. There are 21 households here in Saginaw that currently have signed up for this program. We would love to see more. Just thought we'd put a plug in for that. So that's sort of our presentation, and I'll pause and take any questions that you might have.
Questions, council? Cindy?
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. It was very informative. How do we get the word out about the Star Saver program to our community?
So we do mail-outs with that, and we put them, everyone who gets a ride on our ambulance gets one of those in their ambulance bill. So we try to send them out with water bills. We do one of those every year. We put them on websites. It's on our website. We've done all kinds of campaigns for billboards, that sort of stuff. So we're doing everything we possibly can. It would be helpful if we could get it, make sure we get it on your city websites and remind the citizens, because it's a great way to. I mean, an ambulance bill, just so you know, the average ambulance bill is about $1,600, and most insurance companies, commercial insurance companies, it varies. They'll cover anywhere from 50% to 80%, someplace in there. So it still leaves a pretty good bill. So for $69, and I know what most people will say, well, I'm never going to need an ambulance. We meet 350 of those a day who thought they would never need an ambulance. So trust me, it happens, and it's unfortunate, and we don't want you to have two traumas, which is the trauma you received and then the trauma you received from the bills that you're going to receive from that. So it's a great way to do that.
Cindy, I've had it for at least 5 or 6 years. Never had to use it, but it's very cheap insurance.
That's the way it's supposed to work.
Yes.
That's right. We
I think
never see you.
I actually signed up for it the year after my wife had to have one take her in, and so I promote it to people that ask me about it. I mean, it's not like that's all I do, but I do promote it.
Well, I would imagine that most of your clientele are probably older customers, and, the younger generation said that that's what Facebook is for, is our generation.
Right.
Do y'all have a Facebook presence as well that we could share?
We do. We do social media. We have Facebook. We have websites. We have a number of ways. You can sign up online. You don't have to have a paper form to do that. You can do it in paper. But these are the mail-outs that we send out. So you'll get some of these in the mailbox. But
they do provide you a card. I found out you don't have to have that card.
Nope.
As long as you're signed up, then their billing department will take care of it.
They give you a nice sticker for your car, too.
Excellent.
Just what everybody needs. One more sticker for their car.
Any
Any other questions?
Questions, council?
So we also have provided you with our annual report. We do one of these every year, and inside of it is much more detailed information about what happened this year, and including some financial information because we just finished our audit. And lastly, I think you've received a card. We have a foundation, and the foundation's having a clay shoot. So if you like to shoot things and not hurt anything, we'd love to have you participate in that.
So just a question back on the enrollment. Is there like an application someone would have to fill out and go through the process?
For the Star Saver program?
Yeah, the Star Saver program.
Yeah, it's a small application. You have to fill out some information, but it's pretty easy.
I'm just thinking that folks that are on fixed income, $69 may be a lot of money for them to cut loose of at one time. And I'm wondering if we can't figure out a way to maybe put in the water bill $6 a month and just promote it that way, and they just add $6 a month to their water bill, and at the end of the year they've got their $69 covered, and all they got to do is fill out the application. They're done.
And we're happy to work with the city because there's some rules around that, but yeah, you could do that.
Sure, let's look into it. I think it's a good idea. We want to promote
Mr. Mayor, if I
program.
may, real quick, a couple of brief comments. Mr. Hooten, thank you for the very kind comments. I appreciate that greatly. The Star Saver is on the city website, but we will re-up that in prominence on the city website. I've said this for, I know, the past 2 or 3 years and probably many more years than that, but I say it again with all sincerity. Our partnership with MedStar only continues to strengthen, and our citizens are the recipients of world-class emergency services through that partnership. So I don't want that to get overlooked. They really get good service in our partnership with MedStar.
And you said the $69 was for the whole household?
Yes.
It's not just per person?
No, $69 for your entire household. And it will cover someone if you had someone who is dependent, but maybe they're in college or school or something. They just have to be in the service area, have to live in the service area or work in the service area. You don't have to live in the service area even. So it's pretty inexpensive compared to the balance bill that you would get otherwise.
It's cheap insurance. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Keep up the good
your
work. All right, item number 7 at 6:36, we're in a public hearing. Consideration action regarding recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission on request for a final development plan associated with a planned development zoning with community, commercial, and multifamily uses. And for that, we have Rick Trice.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, can I just, sorry to
Go
just
ahead.
quickly interject. If you'd like, you can open item 8 as well, since it's a companion item, and then you can conduct a single public hearing for both items and certainly take action separately if you'd like.
Okay. Then at 6:36, I'll open a public hearing for item number 8, consideration action regarding recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission regarding a request for approval to amend the 2016 comprehensive plan from agriculture to planned development and change the zoning from agriculture to planned development with community and commercial and multifamily uses for the land so described.
Try not to be too redundant. As Bryn said, this item and the following item is for approval of the development plan associated with the square development and also the PD zoning. This is land that's located north of Walmart off the boulevard between Old Decatur Road and Saginaw Boulevard. The developer is AM and JK Development LLC. Representatives are in the audience tonight if you were to have questions of the developer. Engineers Winkleman and Associate Mike Clark will be presenting the case to you. Existing zoning on the property is agricultural. The ultimate land use plan calls for community commercial on those 2 tracts. There'll be 2 separate tracts of land involved. The proposed zoning is PD with underlying MF2, multifamily 2, and community commercial. There also is one tract, Tract 3, that we'll get into a little bit, that's designated as open space on the development plan. When the Planning and Zoning Commission considered and approved the case, which they did unanimously on both the zoning and the development plan, they stipulated that open space Tract 3 would be attached to some entity for perpetual maintenance. It's not being dedicated as public park, it's being dedicated as open space, which is not a zoning district, but it's a separate tract located within the development plan. Just some background on what occurred at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I'm sure people have signed up tonight to speak. Fellowship Baptist Church, which is located north of the site, had appeared before the commissioners and expressed some concern about drainage. The roadway is currently being overtopped, and some drainage is crossing into their property, but that's located north of these 2 tracts. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sit down and be quiet for a while and introduce Mike Clark, who can introduce his team, and he'll present the case for you.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Please.
Good evening. My name is Michael Clark. I'm with Winkleman and Associates, 6750 Hillcrest Plaza, Suite 325, Dallas 75230. Rick did a good job of explaining just the generalities of the property. It is kind of 2 pieces of property connected with a neck in the middle there. We've worked pretty diligently with staff to try to create a roadway alignment that you see here, which does several things. It obviously connects Old Decatur with Business 287, but what it also does is it creates 4 corners, 2 corners at Business 287, 2 corners at Old Decatur, which really enhance the ability for commercial development on those 2 end caps. As you move interior, I think the commercial ability to do something of significance is lost by kind of behind Walmart and behind something that's on the frontage roads. So what we've tried to do is create the multifamily internalized and establish the commercial at Business 287, which we have pegged for more restaurant-type uses, a little bit more higher intensity, and then the commercial uses along Old Decatur as the same CC district, but maybe the lesser intensity would probably gravitate there. The smaller tract on the southwest corner, Tract 5, we've established as floating tract, if you will. What it does, it allows us to create a pad site there at the southwest corner if the commercial is viable, and it allows us to put it with the multifamily to allow them to provide some additional open space, additional density to help enhance the multifamily if it works that way. So we've designed that small tract. It's about an acre with some flexibility in it. The multifamily, the concept's been designed to try to establish some connectivity with the open space. The open space is also placed in such a manner that we hope that a restaurant use can use it as some additional area for, if nothing, visibility or play areas or things like that. We don't have specific users at this point. The zoning, if approved tonight, will certainly help us market to those people. The PD establishes a few what I consider to be minor deviations and clarifications. As you can see in the plan, there's lots of curves and there's lots of corners, and it makes it difficult to maintain consistent landscape buffers. So what we've tried to do is establish an average landscape buffer that meets the minimum. So it gives us some flexibility in our site plan layouts. In addition, we have established or requested, we haven't established anything yet, we've requested the ability to have signage on Business 287 and Old Decatur to allow each individual user to advertise on that sign, which I think will give great presence for the entire 27 acres. And I apologize, I did skip something with the roadway. I think what the roadway does, in addition to establishing the four corners, it also establishes somewhat of a bypass for the entire northwest quadrant when your overpass goes in. So when there's an overpass, it does allow for people to kind of make a circle around that northwest quadrant, and we think will also enhance the viability of the commercial uses on the two ends. We've prepared a traffic study and a signal warrant analysis. We've met with TxDOT, and they favorably they reacted favorably. I don't have approval yet, but they reacted favorably to a left turn and a signal on Business 287. The traffic study, I believe, supports and recommends deceleration lanes on Old Decatur and on Business 287. So those will be brought forward. We are working on a preliminary plat, which will address water, sewer, drainage, and many of the things outlined in the traffic impact analysis. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. As Rick said, the ownership is here, and we'd respectfully request your approval.
All right, council questions? Mary?
The proposed or potential traffic signal?
Yes, ma'am.
So how would that work as far as timing is concerned, and what steps do you have to take with TxDOT to get that approved, and how would that work?
Well, the signal warrant analysis is the first step, which basically a signal warrant analysis establishes that a signal meets warrants, which is very Austin Powerish. I'm sorry, that didn't come out the way I wanted it to. It establishes that a signal can be built and meet the criteria that allows it to function properly. So that's been done, and your staff has reviewed that. So at that point, TxDOT approves it conceptually, and then the construction drawings are submitted, and then it's constructed like any other project.
Do they control it? Does TxDOT control
I don't know the answer to that. It's
it will be a TxDOT signal. They control all the signals on the boulevard.
Yeah.
So yeah.
They tell you how to put it in, how much it's going to cost you to put it in, then they control it.
And they'll require I apologize for interrupting, but they'll require the designer to establish a timing and get it in sync with the rest of the signal to the south as well.
Which is affected by the railroad.
Yeah. Sure.
Doesn't hurt to put that little asterisk in there.
Yeah.
I had a question. There's one piece there that I just had a question about the pedestrian crossing connection. Would you explain how that would work to tie in and what that crossing would look like?
You're talking about from the multifamily into the open space?
Correct. It's called pedestrian crossing on the plan. It's in sector, I have to look what sector. It's track 1, I believe where it is.
Yes, I understand what you're asking about.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Sorry. I think the goal was to establish a specific location for pedestrians to cross to get into the open space. I admittedly don't have a final design of it.
Okay.
I don't envision enough traffic that for flashing pedestrian lights
That's
and
what my
things like
question,
that.
okay.
I think that's a legitimate question, and I'm happy to look into it as we proceed
Okay.
on with final construction drawings. I think that's a reasonable thing to look into.
And I do like how it connects to the trails, or that's the point, it's connect to the trails and make it one big walking loop kind of thing. Okay.
Sir, and that's in your traffic impact analysis, one of the last points, it says it's recommended that a cross-access be provided between tracks 1 and 2. So it sounds to me like your traffic engineer is suggesting that you try and move that drive further to the east so that you can take advantage of cross-connection between those two tracks.
Tracks 1 and 2 are up on 287?
The two tracts of land. So you've got 1 and 2, the tract 1 and 2, and you see where you're leaving your multifamily with a very large drive approach onto Saginaw Square Drive. You can go back to that previous drawing. The large divided drive entry that's coming into
Yes.
the multifamily.
Okay, I thought so. We may have some confusion on what tracts.
Okay.
But
between what the engineer is referring to here and what you're about to tell me, I guess.
Well, perhaps I'm not.
Okay.
The tracts sometimes this is an excuse, so I apologize in
No,
advance.
it's not a problem.
Sometimes we have a drawing that shows a tract, and then we change the tract numbers. But basically, where the words Saginaw Square Boulevard are, and that's this drawing, that is actually the church property. So and there will be right-of-way adjacent to the church property, so that'll be up to the city if they want them to allow connectivity there. But the Tract 1 and Tract 2 that's being discussed is that make sure that Tract 1 being the retail that's our furthest northwest corner there, it says retail/restaurant, can connect through to Saginaw Square Boulevard so everybody doesn't have to go out on Old Decatur. That was the intent of the statement on the traffic study.
So just so I'm clear, and I'm holding up the traffic impact analysis here. So tract 1 and tract 2, tract 1 and tract 2 is what we're talking about?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. This tract 1 and tract 2, that's small number 1 and small number 2 there.
I got you.
Yes. At
Okay.
the onset of the TIA. At the onset of the TIA, we did not have the details.
Oh, it wasn't broken up into 5 separate tracts, is what you're
Yes.
telling me.
That
Understood.
nice drawing is all I had at the onset, so we'll
Got
make
it.
sure that was provided.
Got it. Okay. I think I understand the comment from the traffic engineer. So I just want to address traffic in particular. The north end of Saginaw is our biggest complaint in the city. Nobody likes to go from south to north, even to shop right now, because the traffic is horrendous. We get comments on our websites, Facebook page. People prefer to drive to Lake Worth to shop rather than drive from Old Saginaw to Saginaw North just to avoid the traffic. So I kind of want to address the quadrants of traffic that your study points out loads up particular intersections. The one I'm most concerned about is the Old Decatur and Bailey Boswell intersection and how that particular intersection is loaded up. There's a mitigation comment from your engineer that talks about eastbound traffic coming from the west and putting in a right-hand turn lane. That's the city of Fort Worth. It really doesn't affect us. But essentially, what are we doing to ensure that traffic turning to the north onto Old Decatur does not bottleneck once it gets north of the 7-Eleven? Because there is essentially 6 lanes, 3 going both directions with right-hand turn lanes, and it bottlenecks now into 2 lanes. So what prevents us from being in the situation where you turn right, you go 150 feet, and all of a sudden everybody bottlenecks into 1 lane heading north? How are we going to overcome that particular intersection? I didn't see that in the mitigation plan. That's why I'm asking.
One of the things that we are working through as well with staff is a proportionality agreement, or I guess a rough proportionality evaluation that Kimley Horns presented to us, and we're reviewing for our participation, as from the developer's participation in the Old Decatur construction. There's also been the same thing that was established for Kroger in Fort Worth and the multifamily in Fort Worth. Excuse me. I think the ultimate goal would be if we could all find enough money, we get Old Decatur widened through our property.
Exactly.
I think we'd all love that.
Yes.
My client would, provided he doesn't have to front everything, but and I think the city would. But we are still working through that. And I know it's related to the traffic study, but it's also morphed into this rough proportionality evaluation and a subsequent development agreement with Rick. I believe it will come back here. Correct?
Yeah, I wanted to respond maybe on two comments. As far as the right turn lane eastbound off of Bailey Boswell, City of Fort Worth does have currently a development going into that corner, and they are proposing a right turn lane. So that would be something they will install as part of in conjunction with their development. As far as the Old Decatur Road, Mike's correct. We've been looking at developer share for construction of Old Decatur North, and frankly, we think we may have enough money to build a substantial portion, if not all, of Old Decatur. We may be bringing, and again, that's still under evaluation, we may be bringing an IPO forward for the design of that roadway so that we can refine it more and know exactly what that'll cost. But there's a range of money, but with their proportionality, if that comes through, is approved and funded, then we should have a pretty good sum of money to do improvements on Old Decatur.
How many linear feet are we talking?
I think it's 1,100 feet to the city limit line for Bailey Boswell.
It's very close to that. That's correct.
Not great.
And so I know that we had an exaction on the Kroger curb cut that now services the Chick-fil-A. I think that we also had an exaction on the housing development or the high-density housing development on the west side.
We have about 600. I'm sorry to interrupt. We have about 660,000 in escrow for those two developments.
Perfect. So our 2018 update for that stretch of road says that that's a $1.8 million project.
It is, and as we were working through the proportionality agreement, we got, I guess, advice, for lack of a better word, from Kimley Horn to that estimate is inflated. That's why I say there's a range. The 1.8 is the upper end. There is a lower end that we think we have sufficient funds, again, to build at least a substantial portion up to their street intersection at least. So
does the 1.8 million also include the necessary drainage improvements needed to handle the Fort Worth water offshed?
Right, it'd be drainage and the pavement.
So the 1.8 million you feel like is sufficient for that?
1.8 is more than sufficient, but I do think that estimate is conservative.
Okay.
And actually, Ms. Schumart is here to can testify to that. I think she prepared the estimate at one time. So.
Okay. And so that was a primary intersection concern. And I have to say, my constituents are more upset or concerned about traffic impact than anything else that I know of. The other is going to be the TxDOT possible denial. What you're hearing going on with this racetrack thing earlier, it would not be in the benefit of the city for this development to move forward and that roadway to be connected and TxDOT kick your can down the road for 10 years. So I certainly see the TxDOT issue being very big here in getting the traffic warrant approved by TxDOT and also getting the left-hand turn lane and the right decel lane coming from the north.
Well, and I'm sorry to interrupt again. I would also say that the developer is funding the traffic signal. TxDOT has been.
That's what I heard him say at the very beginning, but I'm worried more about TxDOT approving it.
Well, the other thing to consider is that the development plan actually shows the signal as part of the plan. So if TxDOT for some reason were to deny the warrant and not install the signal, then they would have to come back to this body to see how they would mitigate that.
How long would that take, though? That could be months and months, right? Is there any way to estimate?
Pardon me, I know you're asking Rick. I'm just blurting out here. I'm sorry. There is no way to tell. I agree precisely, but we did have a strong meeting with the city was in attendance, where TxDOT was very receptive. I found nothing in our topographic surveys and our layouts that would cause any difference. I understand what you're asking, and I agree it's important, and we are working diligently to get TxDOT to, at the very least, I mean, the permit's a foregone conclusion once they approve the concept, and that's what we're trying to get formally done. And Rick will be on board as soon as I hear, he'll hear.
So, and just to reiterate, if that intersection cannot be dealt with before this development starts, I can't see how the development can start. It's 1,000 vehicle mile per day impact to the infrastructure that would be exiting essentially onto Old Decatur. Because not everybody's going to line up to take a right onto Business 287 with no signal, no nothing, divided freeway with a barrier between them. So that's a very big concern, Rick, if we can.
I agree, and this is not the end of the road. I mean, this is just the zoning. There are platting requirements, and then there will be, again, proportionality agreement, and then I believe an economic incentive agreement. So the infrastructure will come back to you at some point, and the signal will be in that package, we would assume. If not, then we'll have another discussion.
Yeah, and what the mention of the economic development incentive, I do want to make sure that the roadway that we're talking about through the property is intended to be a dedicated roadway, and that the city, it would belong to the city. It would be public property and become a city asset.
Absolutely.
That is the intention.
That's certainly the intention as I've heard it.
Okay.
Not to be coy about that.
No.
I've heard nothing but that.
I have not gotten a straight answer about that, so I wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth. So
that is how our plat is prepared.
Okay, so the plat is prepared to where that is a dedicated right-of-way. It will become city infrastructure, and we have all right and access to it, and we can call it an asset.
That is correct.
Okay.
Right, and that's going to be on the plat. That's got to be. It has to be on the preliminary plat, right, Rick? That's got to be. That will be contained in the plat. Yeah. Okay, that was my understanding.
So, do we have utility ideas for that right-of-way? I was asking Public Works, just since it becomes a 70-foot wide right-of-way, do we have?
There is a development, utility plan for the subdivision, water, sewer, and storm drain. It's still conceptual. There needs to be designed, but there is a layout. He has a plan that we have in our files. Part of that was an off-site sewer that would have to go all the way through Walmart's property a good ways. We have found out. We knew that there was a project in Fort Worth on the books to extend the sanitary sewer relief to the north of this development, and we found out just recently that the timing of that project would meet our timing. So we have at least reduced that development cost and had a better outfall for the sanitary sewer. So the plan that's on file, at least the sanitary sewer portion of that, needs to be updated.
So you're not captive to Walmart, is what I'm hearing.
It certainly appears that way, which makes me happy, and I'm pretty sure it makes the gentleman behind me pretty happy.
I can appreciate that. So with respect to traffic, there was one other thing that did not appear on the traffic study, and I just want everybody to be aware of it. I know that in our CIP plan right now, we have proposed a traffic signal at Knowles and Old Decatur, and I believe that would only exist once the bridge is constructed. Is that right? It would only be needed if the bridge is constructed in that location. A signal at Knowles and Beta Boswell. What did I say?
McElroy.
I'm trying to figure out where it was.
There's one there. There's one at Knowles.
Yeah, so we have one at Knowles and Bailey Boswell. That signal, just so that we all understand the timing necessity there, because we have a signal right at 287. We would then have one at Knowles, which is less than 1,000 feet, maybe 1,200 feet max. And then we have another one, again, less than 1,000 feet away at Old Decatur and Bailey Boswell. So since I didn't see that in future, your traffic study goes on out to 2026, somewhere in 2021 to 2022, that signal will be there, and it would be interesting to see what happens to that corridor between 287 and Old Decatur with that signal in place, with the turn percentages that they're showing there at Old Decatur and East Bailey Boswell, or West Bailey Boswell. So if you could just keep that in mind, That's rolling around in the back of my mind right now.
Okay.
But in terms of traffic, I think that's really all I had. One thing that concerned me about this proposal, the PD proposal, is that I understand the viability of this and nature configuration of this piece of property and the land and where it's situated. It makes it difficult to make a profitable development without a partnership with the city. I realize that. But something that's given me a little bit of heartburn, I'm just going to share it with you and let my hair down. I don't like the idea of us softening our development standards. I don't like that. I don't like it that we're asking our taxpayers to come up with an incentive, and at the same time we're softening our development standards, particularly in the area of density. And I know the reasoning there, but I have to understand, and I would like to communicate to you, if you're talking about flexible space that's worth an acre of land on a hard corner, and what we're talking about is keeping that corner beautiful and making it look nice and spreading out the density just enough to get some very nice landscaping, that's pretty heavy on the minds of our citizens as well. Not making our city look like an urban development and going from a 65% density to an 80 to 85% density starts to look like a very urban environment. Now, granted, all day long, the Walmart parking lot and Walmart development down to the south, it looks like a gym sock hanging on a shower rod. Nobody's arguing about that. But at some point, we've got to take a step forward to make things look beautiful. And I don't like the idea of going to our taxpayers and saying, hey, just because the neighbor did it, we're going to let this guy get away with it, and then at the same time, we're going to ask you for some incentive dollars to pay them. So just know that that's a rub for me. And I don't want to go through the list of what the concessions are. You know what they are. I think Rick knows what they are. I just want to share that with you.
Understood.
Okay.
Gabe, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a comment. One, this would be the first, should it garner your approval and move through to development stages, be the first mixed-use development in the city's history. The purpose of the planned development process is to create a higher quality development. So the standards in this proposal are higher than what exists along Saginaw Boulevard now. They followed roughly what we have proposed, although there's been no action by the council, overlay district with regards to signage, setback, and restriction on uses. So planned development, again, generally promotes the highest and best use. I just want to make that comment.
All right. Since we'll get into the weeds with it.
Anybody else want to comment before I
Sure.
go on? Anybody else have any other questions before we? David? Okay. Sorry, Pat, go ahead.
Okay, so the main concern that I have, obviously, with respect to density, we're also softening our position on building materials that front Saginaw Boulevard. I'm opposed to the use of EFS or systems that have a shelf life less than 15 years. I mean, I know that it's a consideration because it does soften cost, but we have a 100% masonry requirement on our buildings on Saginaw Boulevard for a reason. And that's our published requirements today, and we're softening on that. My point is we should not be softening on our published requirements. There's no reason to do that, especially if we're asking our taxpayers to come up with money to incentivize the development.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Gabe, sorry.
Just a note on the density. Let's say our flex parcel does in fact develop as multifamily. I believe the intent, and Mr. Clark is best able to speak to this, or the development group, the intent is to develop from east to west. So the retail restaurants would be first. By the time you park this out, and you actually have building plans, you have 17 some units an acre, potentially, just far less than what's currently allowed in the zoning of 24 units an acre. So we're talking about a product that's less dense than allowed and for the sake of a comparison, probably about the size and footprint of Mariposa or close to it.
So Mariposa did not ask for money from the taxpayers. We gave them a loan, and they paid us back with interest. I'm just saying that any time a developer comes into the city and asks for an incentive, we need to strongly consider not softening on our development standards.
So I'll just remind the council, the action before the council this evening is that of land use and zoning. Should zoning not be approved by the council, nothing else is going to happen. We'll have 2 trapezoid tracks that we may visit with the owners and see what they'd like to do.
The zoning includes the standards that we're talking about, right? The lessening of the standards that we're talking about.
What's binding in the zoning is what's in the development plan and the plan development document.
Yeah. So the planning document today shows that we have softened on a number of our development standards. And what I would ask is that we at least meet our published development standards. If we can't do that, if we can't reach that agreement here, then I simply can't vote for the zoning tonight.
May I make a statement?
Sure, please.
Thank you. I appreciate it. As far as the density goes, and I need to go back and check my notes. There's a lot of numbers and a lot of things, but my recollection is the MF2. I don't believe we're asking for an increase in density in the MF2. Now, the MF2 is not on. It's not on the comprehensive plan or anything like that, so it's a little bit of a. I'm not trying to be coy about that, but I don't recall that we were asking for an increase in density. But from a density standpoint in multifamily, one of the things that a higher density allows us to do, it allows us to bring things, and I know we don't want the urban look necessarily, but I'm not sure everybody wants the old garden-style apartments either. So what the density does allow us to do is to increase the compactness of certain areas to allow open space for other areas and provide amenities and things like that, and have enough units to provide legitimate amenities for the multifamily. So there is a benefit to the density in that regard. The building materials, my desire with the request for the building materials is we are looking at a lot of restaurants, and they use a lot of, I'm a civil engineer, so I apologize in advance, frou-frou and ornamental things and different sign bands and roofing, and that's why we ask for the flexibility there, not necessarily just to soften standards. But I do understand your statement, but I wanted to be clear on the 2 different things. I don't think there's anything in the density.
Sure, and let me clarify what I mean by density. I'm talking about the lot coverage, the developed lot coverage. So if we're moving from what we call our 80, where we want 80% coverage now on our lots in this plan development, 65% is our standard, meaning that we would like to see 35% of the lot, natural landscaping, essentially an undeveloped parcel so that there's a lot more landscaping. Now, if you've got 20 acres, total development, and you are condensing these tracts, you're putting the multifamily in tract 2, okay? And tract 2 has a higher development density. It's 80%. But the other tracts are back around that 60 or even greater, or greater area of undisturbed natural landscaping, say maybe 45 to 50%, to where the entire 20 acres is more in the 65 to 70% range. I think that's somewhat palatable. What I'm seeing, though, is that if it's 80% across the board in the entire 20 acres, that whole 20 acres is going to look pretty urban when it's said and done.
I guess the one thing I would add to that is we do have the open space, which is 100% undeveloped. So, I mean, if you factor, and I'm not trying, this comes out as argumentative, and I apologize.
I
try to point out positive things about it as well. So we do have I forget the numbers exactly, but 3.5 to 4 acres out of the 27 acres that is open space. So that kind of factors in. Now, part of it's drainage. I'm not trying to make light of that. There is drainage going through there.
And it could be made to look beautiful.
But we could also push our properties into that open space and not create it at all. So I think the open space should be factored in, and I don't know what that number is. I probably should have been prepared for that. But So
Well, you're going to have to detain your water runoff somehow, because the city of Fort Worth is not going to let you dump an ounce into their system. So you're going to have to figure out how to hold it on your property. All I'm suggesting at this point is, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, is that if you were coming to us and not asking a taxpayer to put up a penny, and you were going to develop this whole thing outright, I would consider those to be concessions that are consistent with the rest of those parcels that are developed in that area. But every taxpayer now has beef because they put $1 into it. And now we're having to go back to our constituents and say that not only did we soften our standards and increase the traffic up here, but we're now funding part of it. So I want to reduce the number of things that our constituents can come back to us and give us licks about, is what I'm getting at here. So softening our standards is just an area that I have a grievance at that point, softening those standards. That's all.
All right, let's move forward. Any other questions for this gentleman? I don't want to keep you up here. I know we have some public that want to speak as well, so I'd like to get to them.
Thank you.
Any other questions for them? Thank you, sir. All right, so it is still a public hearing. It is open for anyone who wishes to speak. You don't have to fill out a card or anything. Do you have cards? Is that what you're coming? Okay. Well, anybody want to speak? This is a public hearing. Yes, sir. Welcome, Councilman.
Mayor Flippo, how are you today? Good. Council,
Tell everybody who you are. I know who you are. Make sure they know who.
I should do that, shouldn't I? My name is Gary Stewart. As Mayor Flippo announced, I am a councilman, but not in your area. I am a councilman in Lake Worth. But I'm also a deacon at Fellowship Baptist Church. One thing that we're certainly concerned about future going forward is water and how it's controlled, maintained. We used to always talk about the 100-year floods. It seems to me the 100-year flood happens about every 3 or 4 years now, or less. We had a pretty good one just this Saturday, as a matter of fact. A lot of runoff. We certainly are in favor of the development of this project. Just want to make sure that y'all have consideration to us when it comes to detention. I was not fully aware of what the city of Saginaw's intent was to reconstruct a portion of Old Decatur Road. As y'all remember, the city of Fort Worth, when they were working that project, turned that into a 2-year long process, which had a long-term effect on our church because it became almost impossible. A lot of people viewed it as impossible to come just make services at our church.
Well, they tore up your parking lot too, didn't they?
Okay, there may have been a little bit of that. I mean, there was a lot of different things that transpired. We just want to make sure that y'all show us some consideration. We want to be good stewards to the community. We want to make sure that we help y'all in every way that we can and vice versa so that everybody prospers in the process. That's all I've got.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else wish to speak? I don't see Ms. Lakey is not. Oh, okay. Any other folks want to speak?
If she is.
Ms. Lakey, would you like to speak? You're up. That's okay. That's okay. Come on.
I had a question. We recently had apartments come in on the west side of Old Decatur, and now we're thinking about putting apartments on the east side of Old Decatur, increasing traffic, increasing the number of children in our schools. Why are we putting apartments there? Why not retail, restaurants? Why apartments? Why do we need apartments there?
I think there's several reasons. Gabe, you want to go into the multitude of reasons, but
so to address the first point, on the west side of Old Decatur, that's Fort Worth, which is the best-known suburb of Saginaw, Texas. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big fan of Fort Worth, for the record. The way developments work is that property owners have property rights, right?
I didn't understand you.
Okay. Property owners have rights, and they bring proposals to us based on what they feel the market is there to build. The zoning doesn't guarantee that apartments will be built. It just guarantees that there's a legal right for that to happen in the future. So I think the applicant might be best able to answer why in their mixed-use development, the total plan, they're proposing multifamily.
My name is Farouk Wazir Ali. I'm not going to ask you to repeat that. I'm a member of the development team. To answer that question, we went through the preliminary study in terms of the need of the apartments in the area, and there's definitely a need. And in Saginaw, if you know, there are no new apartment properties. They're all old ones. So we thought that that was the main reason we thought that we needed to add in the PD.
Okay, thanks, sir. And a couple of things I could answer. We did talk to the school district. We talked to Dr. Chadwell and his team, and they're on board with this. It's important to note these are market rate apartments, so there's no other ask for that as a market rate. We intend to make sure they are excellently built and high quality, and as we said, a little less dense than they are required to be. So that's part of the reason for this. Gabe, do you have something else to add?
Just one brief comment to get you excited about a future item. So the Eat and Play survey we'll talk about in a little bit. One of the things that came out of that survey is we asked people, where do you shop? Well, the two biggest kind of retail shopping leakages we have in Saginaw are Alliance, three, West 7th, and the good people of Lake Worth. So you think about those places, especially Alliance and West 7th, any new mixed-use center anywhere that's viable will have a multifamily component. That's part of what people want, and it's market-driven.
Okay. All right, any other folks want to speak? Rabbi, please.
I wasn't expecting to do anything other than praying today, but
Don't stop.
Thank you. Baruch Hashem, we need prayer, all of us. But I do live in the suburb of Saginaw known as Fort Worth, just a little west of the new Kroger over there by the lake. And so I drive that area all the time. I drive my daughter to school going up Old Decatur. So I know what the lady's speaking about with all the traffic. But I will say this, I just wanted to add about the apartment issue, is that our synagogue is very unique. And as a result of that, we do have people from various parts of the country who have moved here to be a member of our synagogue. We have other people who are working on a plan to move here for that very reason. One of the challenges, it just came up, I thought about it when you were talking about this, is that one of the challenges is where to live. And so there have been families, there's two specifically, one has moved from Georgia, another family's moved from Canada, that have had to rent apartments in other places of the city because there's nothing to do here. There's nothing suitable. And they would love to be able to live in Saginaw, close to the synagogue. I just wanted to share that just when we were talking about why, what are the needs to develop, and this is one of the reasons that it's a very real thing, people coming from all over, and for that reason. So.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good point. Are any other folks wish to speak? Mary, you have a question?
I just have a comment that I think we should all realize that we have an opportunity here to have a significant upgrade to the city. Planned developments are really the way to go. It's much preferable to having development come in one at a time with no continuity and concept, and I just think we're very fortunate to have the opportunity to have this type of development in our city.
Anyone else? Councilman Cindy?
I have a question, and I'm not exactly sure who I need to address this to, but for the apartment complexes, how many are we looking at as single-bedroom apartments, and then the other ones are multi-bedroom apartments?
Currently, excuse me one sec. Pardon me. We don't have a apartment user yet. Part of that is having this zoning put in place. An individual apartment user would come in and they would have their mix. What we're seeing today, most apartments are heavy towards the one bedroom and next heaviest to the two bedroom, and sometimes a smattering of three bedrooms, but some don't even have three bedrooms these days. I can't speak to this precisely, but that mix has not been defined in the PD.
And that's kind of what I suspected. But I realize that the trend is that, we are having smaller, younger generations are having smaller families. So I really don't see, a massive impact on our school districts.
Yeah.
So thank you, sir.
The millennials need somewhere.
All right, any other questions? We've gone on this a while. Let's see. Any other folks, anyone else want to speak? Then at 7:21, I will take item 7 out of a public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
It's 7 and 8, right?
Well, we still have to do 8. We're not doing them together.
Separately?
You can vote on them together, or you can make separate motions.
I was going to do them separately. Do we want to do them together? Well,
Mayor, could I interject?
Rick,
one thing?
yes, sir.
I just want to make sure that you remember that the P&Z recommended that the maintenance of Track 3 be attached to an entity. So if you could include that in your motion, just
Maintenance
consideration.
of track 3.
Right, and Mike can.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and we concur with that. I meant that was not in my notes, but Rick mentioned it. And
Privately maintained.
We do concur with that.
Good point. Thank you, sir. Then I will entertain a motion.
Lost my screen.
You want my paper?
No. So item number 7, the motion would be to approve the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation of the final development plan as presented in our packet.
Any second? All right. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? One opposed? Thank you. Item 7. So item 8, we're going to roll into item 8. Do we need to discuss anything else new about item 8, Rick? We're still in a public hearing for
No,
8.
sir, other than this would be the place to add the maintenance requirement.
This is just the zoning piece, correct? Brandon, am I legal so far, Brad?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. That's what I like to hear.
Thank you for asking.
No, okay. All right, so item 8, I will entertain, or any other questions or discussion on item 8 on the zoning piece?
So in the motion, we just need to add, since it's not in our recommendation, that maintenance for track 3 will be provided for by the private owner.
You can be that detailed, or you can say as recommended by P&Z,
Oh,
since they recommended
that's
it.
a lot easier to do.
There you go.
So
All right. If there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion on
Mayor,
item 8.
I'll make a motion that we approve Planning and Zoning's recommendation of the 2016 Comprehensive Plan, Final Development Plan, to change the zoning from ag to a PD for the square as described in our packet.
Second.
All right, Charlie, second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? All right, motion passed. Item 8. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Item number 9 at 7:23. We're in public hearing. Consideration and action regarding ordinance 2019-08, continuation of curfew for minors. For that, Police Chief Lee Howe.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is the second of 2 required public hearings before the council takes final consideration and any action on the continuation of an ordinance that was created in 2001 that creates restrictions on the curfew for minors appearing in public unsupervised after certain hours or between certain hours. The first public hearing was held on April the 2nd, and during that discussion, a question arose regarding some of the defenses, in particular the defense of marriage of a person under the age of 18. I researched that. According to the Texas Family Code, you are required to have a petition before a court removing your disabilities of minority before there's a marriage license granted if you're under the age of 18. So there's also some other conditions where a juvenile can just petition the court if they're already living outside the supervision of a guardian or a parent and on their own financially. And if that condition has been granted by a court, then that also becomes a defense to prosecution. Since the last public hearing, also consulted extensively with Municipal Judge Lorraine Irby, who also recommends continuation of the ordinance and agrees with the judicious application of it. And I'll be glad to answer any other questions.
Council, any questions for Chief? Mary?
Not a question, but just a comment to thank Chief Howe for the looking into Section 54-64, and that I understand the need for that now.
Any other questions? Concerns?
And this is just a continuation of an ordinance that we've had in place just to allow our police force a tool, mechanism to continue the curfew.
Yes, sir. There's no substantial change in the ordinance itself, and the local government code requires it to be reviewed before the continuation of it, and it requires it every 3 years.
And you mentioned in your statement talking to the judge about judicious use of this ordinance. Can you just explain what that would really mean, how that would be in real life?
Yes, sir. In what she's seen in terms of the cases that she's heard in municipal court, she felt in every case there was probable cause, and that anytime there was action taken in terms of a detention or citations issued, that it was justified. And she mentioned that it's used quite often by our officers when they run across large groups of juveniles, say in the park or at a party where there's no supervision, and that if we can't find a place for those kids to go and become supervised, then they get cited or detained if necessary. So she was in agreement of it. Again, for 2018, there were 8 citations issued and 2 warnings. So it's not something that we use frequently.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any other questions? All right, so we're taking no action on this tonight, correct?
It's ready for action.
Oh, is it ready after the 2?
Like
this is our second one, so we can take an action?
We hold the second public hearing, and absolutely, then we make a motion to continue the ordinance.
There's no more. If there's no more discussion at 7:27, I'll take us out of a public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that we continue with the curfew for minors as presented.
Second.
David, second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed, there are none. Thank you, Chief. Moving forward. Item number 10, discussion of potential bond election schedule. For that, Assistant City Manager Dolph Johnson.
Mayor and Council, as we've gone through the strategic planning process, we've identified a lot of needs, wants, a lot of projects, capital projects that the city's going to need to address at some point. And so we've begun those studies of identifying those projects. We're working on updating our CIP information. We're working on the concept plan for Knowles. We've got the facilities needs assessment that y'all had a preview of at our last meeting. Our financial plan, we've got a parks needs assessment going on. So we had initially discussed maybe having a bond election in November of this year. But based on the amount of information that we need our consultants to complete and the scheduling, having looked at the dates we would need to call the election, I believe that would be very difficult to do. So based on that, I think it'd probably be more feasible to look at a May of 2020 election for these considerations. And I put together a preliminary schedule for the council to look at in terms of how that would work. There's also been a suggestion of maybe forming a citizens bond committee to do whatever you want them to do, whether you want them to come to you with recommendations or whether you simply want them to promote the projects that y'all select for the bond election. That's up to the council. So, but to have, should you decide to have them review the information and make recommendations to council, that's what this schedule is built on. So simply asking tonight for some council direction on how y'all want to proceed with this. And that's it. That's all I'm looking for, is a little direction.
Council?
Can we do a combination of those two things where we give them some recommendations that or a hit list of what we like to see?
Sure. I mean, we're going to have the information to y'all first, and if y'all want to rank that and then send it back to the committee and say, here's what we need, here's what we can afford to build and when we can afford to build it, because we're going to be asking people to issue debt basically to pay for some of these projects. So, and if you tell them to select one community facility, one road, one park project, however y'all want to do that, it's strictly up to y'all.
Well, and I think that's important for them to get that information, because when we had our forum, everyone wanted things that they had no idea how we were going to pay for them. So they need to understand that there's a debt to pay with that request.
I guess this really looks to me like we've got a couple things to consider. One, is everybody okay with a May 2020 bond election? Anybody in a real hurry to do it in November? I'm not. Everybody okay with that? First thing. We good? Everybody good with May 2020? All right, that's number one. Number two is, as we said about a citizen committee. What does everybody think? Do we want to do a citizen committee?
I think you should.
Okay.
I've participated in every citizens committee on bond elections for the last 10 years here in the community, and I think the only way to successfully pull off a bond election is to put a lot of that decision-making process into the hands of the citizens.
Okay.
So removing that from them is probably, that's the worst thing that we can do to try and pass a bond in this city.
Okay. What does anybody else think? Mary?
I agree that the citizens should be involved, and I think we should ask for volunteers, and if we don't get enough volunteers, maybe we could ask for some residents that we know are, community leaders. But I know when we had our Citizen Summit, I heard a lot of comments about, well, nobody asked me to be in that. So I think some people felt left out, so that if we did ask for volunteers, more people would feel like they didn't have to wait to be asked.
Well, each of us could nominate two or suggest two. That would be helpful to have our
In
input
addition,
on who,
maybe in addition
Yeah.
to volunteers.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. I think that what's important about a community or a citywide bond initiative is that we look at this as a subdivision by subdivision representation. What we saw lacking significantly even in the Citizens Summit was a lot of representation from the east side. I think one way to put a step in the right direction would be to reach out to the homeowners association presidents and make every homeowner association president an immediate member of that committee. That guarantees at least coverage in the homeowner associated areas. In other subdivisions where there are no homeowner associations, I think it would be appropriate to reach out to members of those individual subdivisions and look for leaders that are in those subdivisions and recruit that way as well.
Okay.
I have no problem with offering up to allow them in there, but I don't know that we need to make them be a representative if they don't want to.
All right, so I think we're all in agreement, yes, we want a citizen
Yeah.
committee. I think we got that. So we got the date set, we got a citizen committee. All right. So next, Gabe, you want to?
Mr. Mayor, just one note. It's our intent here within the next couple of months to finish up a financial plan. I think staff will give a general recommendation what a number for new projects would be for the council to consider. That could reasonably, part of the trick, and Patrick's talked about past experience, part of the trick of putting a package together is identifying the right blend of needs and wants, but also putting together something that we can reasonably deliver in
Yes.
a foreseeable
Yes,
amount
sir.
of time. That's where people, get frustrated. Something's voted on and it's not right in front of us. So that's our intent. I don't have that magic number yet. Y'all may tell us it's too low. Y'all may tell us it's too high, but that's our general plan at this point to make a recommendation. That may be kind of a the bar ditches for the bond committee. Ultimately, the council has full authority for calling the election and that sort of thing.
Okay. So, Dolph, do you have the answers you need?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you got direction? Excellent. Because I don't think we need to worry about exactly the makeup of the committee right today. We've got the direction going. Dolph's got a good schedule for us. I think that'll work, so move forward. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we are moving on to item number 11, direction to staff regarding solid waste and recycling program. For that, Assistant City Manager Dolph Johnson.
Happy to talk trash to y'all again, Mayor, tonight. If y'all will recall, back in February, we had a workshop where we discussed the fact that our current contract with our waste company, Waste Connections, for our trash and recycling services will be expiring at the end of October. And this was a good opportunity to discuss the types of service delivery that they have and the options in terms of the way that they provide that service and the costs associated with those options. We basically had three options. One was the manual pickup, the current service we have. Two was a partial automated service where we did the recycling. And the third option was fully automated. And we discussed all of the ins and outs of all that at that workshop. Council basically narrowed that down to option 1 or option 3, either stay the way we are or go to fully automated. There was also a suggestion that night that we do a simple survey and ask the citizens for their input. We did that. So we posted the survey online on a Monday afternoon late, and by Tuesday morning we had over 400 responses, which is incredible for an online survey for a city our size. By the end of that 2 weeks that we left it up, we had a total of 896 responses. And y'all have those survey results in your packets. As you can see, 72% of the citizen responses were to leave it the way it is, and 28% would like to go to the automated. And then we've also attached all of the citizen comments that they were able to provide, so y'all been able to look through those. So tonight I'm asking again for direction from council on how y'all want to proceed, because either way, we need to begin negotiating a new contract with Waste Connections. I just need to know which way y'all would like for us to.
And you told me before that you were able to confirm that most of these were indeed Saginaw residents?
I'm not sure. I'm sure most of them were. You could tell there were a few from the comments where said, hey, we have this service in Fort Worth, you'll love it, or we have this service in Fort Worth, you'll hate it. There are a few of those, but I think, Laura, we're not able to break that down, were we, Laura?
No, it was all just anonymous.
Yeah.
Well, I had a lot of people tell us.
Well, council, what's your pleasure?
We don't even know if a number of them reported twice, multiple times?
They did have individual IP addresses.
Okay, so there weren't any duplicate.
Not unless someone got really sneaky and went to a different computer completely. But then they're very dedicated to trash.
They went to a device farm in China. Yes.
All right, so council, what's your pleasure?
I think we go with what the people are asking for.
I think.
David?
Yeah, leave it the same.
Yeah.
Valerie?
Leave it the same.
Charlie? Leave it the same? Cindy? Mary? I think you've got direction.
Yes, Mayor. Rather than, I think, though, just as an FYI, I think there are enough, the contract's old enough that we need to actually update the contract rather than extend the current contracts. I think my plan would be to bring a new contract to y'all with new terms and conditions in it with the same company.
That would
Sounds
be
good.
awesome.
Thank you, Dolph. All right, moving on. So we are at item number 12. Consideration action regarding Sister Cities Agreement. For that, City Manager Gabe Graham.
Mayor and Council, this is a follow-up item from a presentation last council meeting. So the document before you is a memorandum of understanding. It is legally non-binding. It's merely a statement of goodwill and friendship to pursue a program and get to know a city in another nation. Bryn has reviewed the document because it's required. The State Department has also reviewed, and so I'm happy to answer any questions about what's before you. You know, what we could potentially do in the future is do exchanges. We could potentially send books to our sister city, maybe pending approval in Myanmar, which will take some time. Put up a sign somewhere in the city, like you've probably seen in many cities. Fort Worth has 9 sister cities, saying, you know, we're sister cities with this entity. Would be a high honor for us to send a sign to our friends in Myanmar. They're very, very appreciative. This is actually a national holiday right now. It's the New Year. They have a water festival, and they throw water on people, which is awesome. And it's nationwide. So I think we should implement that.
Do you bring some water, Gabe?
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
But again, nothing binds us in this agreement. It's an expression of goodwill and friendship, and look forward to a lot of fun, hopefully.
Okay. Council, any comments, questions? Everybody good with moving forward with this? We have no, is there action regarding this? Do we need to take a vote on this? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we do approve this recommendation that we enter into a sister city agreement with the city as stated. I'm not going to try to say it.
Okay. Charlie, second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Thank you, Gabe. Thanks for your hard work on this.
I will say it's not written in Texan.
All right, so item number 13 at 7:41, recess into a workshop. Item 14 is the Eat and Play Survey. For that, Alora.
Okay, well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I was hoping that I would be the most important survey tonight, but Dolph stole that thunder with his trash survey. So I will take the second coolest survey of the evening.
Yours looks the best,
though. See? So from November 30th until February 28th of this year, so November 30th of last year. Was that me? No? Okay. The Economic Development Department collected responses via an online survey from our residents, business partners, and other community stakeholders. Nope. It's on. Okay. Sorry about that. So as part of the survey, we also solicited feedback from the community about the retailers and restaurants that they'd like to see come to Saginaw, not just by brand specific names, but we also took the data that we were given, that we were provided, and we looked at it in terms of type of service, type of cuisine, and other general characteristics of those businesses. So a total of 1,089 people in the community responded. The question or the survey was 8 questions plus an optional comment box. It took about 6 minutes on average to complete. So what I would like to do this evening is, if it's all right with y'all, I'd like to go through kind of why we do the survey, why we chose to do a survey, and then turn over the actual fun part of what the responses were to Stephanie Wilson, who is our graduate intern with us from the University of North Texas. She's really the one who spearheaded the design of the survey, got the message out with marketing. I made her collect all the data. She did all the work. So I feel it's only fair to make her then get to say what the cool responses were. So to start out with, okay, so I won't go into too much detail. It's already been a long evening, but basically, why do we care about recruitment? So recruitment is under the umbrella of economic development, which includes business development, community development. Under business development, there are 2 pieces, recruitment and retention, right? So different kinds of recruitment, all of which matter. So why do we care about retail recruitment specifically? See, it was not me.
It likes what you have to say.
I guess so. So why do we care specifically about retail recruitment? It's because retailers are really, additional retail means additional options for our residents. The main word that we saw come up over and over and over again in the survey was that residents are asking for more variety. That was the word. That was a key word. So retail provides that. Retail is also, it helps to increase sales tax. Sales tax dollars then go to fund city services for our residents. Retail sales and general sales taxes are considered injection dollars in an economy, meaning that there's a good portion of those dollars that come from outside sources. So people come in, spend money, city reaps the benefit of getting sales taxes, and then they go home to their communities at night and utilize the services from those communities. So it's a great opportunity in order to add dollars without taking dollars to our community. So retail options can also be community builders, places where people can come together. It's the hangout spots where you go for your, hobby meetings. They can be unique identifiers for a community. Think Six Flags to Arlington, or Grapevine Mills Mall to the city of Grapevine. So, and then there's also an impetus with retail development on commercial zone building. And what I mean by that is retail development tends to be short term. Restaurants and retailers, which all fall under the retail category, they don't tend to have long lifespans in general. So we take that into consideration. What we're really looking for are to be able to build these key corridors through retail development so that they can continue to change as trends change, as people want new things, but that initial sort of zone is in place. Okay, so just so that y'all know, and I did include it in your packet, sort of the retail portion of the ED strategic plan that we're working on for our department that really kind of calls attention to what is it that we're working on, why are we working on it, and how are we going to measure success. So I wanted to just include kind of where we're at with that retail portion so that you could see that the survey is part of our retail recruitment efforts. Okay, so why a survey? I've done a survey every city I've been at for my entire career. I really feel strongly about surveying. It's not something that most communities do. I believe very strongly in it because it's direction that's provided directly from community stakeholders to us. I also like it because, and that's why it's an initiative of our strategic plan, but it's an affordable option. So we used a program, SurveyMonkey. It cost us under $350 for unlimited surveys for the entire city for an entire year. So that was what we used for Dolph's trash survey. I'm sure we'll use it for a number of other things. It's a great affordable option. I like the fact that surveys are inclusive. If you can get to a library or somewhere with Wi-Fi, if you have internet access, you can fill out that survey. And because they're anonymous, then there's really no discrimination involved in it. And then I think it sends a clear message, even if that message is that people in a community have conflicting ideas about what they want. I still think that's a pretty clear message. So again, in that strategic plan draft for retail recruitment, very specifically, I gave that to you guys so y'all could look at, but a survey is a very important piece of the work that we do, and it has specific guidelines that we take into consideration when we design a survey, collect the information, interpret the data, and then how we report it out. So just so y'all know, it wasn't that we just came up with this because we were bored. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over again to Stephanie Wilson. She is just a few months away, y'all, from getting her master's degree in public administration. So she's only with us for a short time, but she's really the one who spearheaded this. So I'm going to turn it over to her to go through what the responses were.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everyone. This was really a great opportunity, and I learned a lot through this whole process. I got to go and represent the city at the Christmas thing we had at the rec center, and get to set up a table and have people right there fill out the survey if they wanted to. We had a couple iPads. I got to promote and kind of see what the city was like to go out and showcase what we were doing. And so thank you for that opportunity. And so we'll start with the top 2020. And so the question asked, what restaurants would you most like to see in Saginaw? And the top three were Chili's, Olive Garden, and Chipotle. And then the second part of that question, or question two, which we combined 1 and 2 on the slide, asked us, what non-food businesses would you most like to see in Saginaw? And our top three responses were Target, Academy, Sports and Outdoors, and then Hobby Lobby. And then the next portion of the survey, the question 3 asked, approximately how many times do you dine out per week? So the participants said on average they ate out 2.2 times per week for breakfast. As you can see, the little Pac-Man is supposed to be eating 2.2 pancakes. And then we asked, or the participants said on average they ate out 2.8 times for lunch. And then for dinner they ate out 3 times per week on average. The next question, question 4, asked, what type of restaurant do you prefer to dine? About 74% of all respondents said that casual family dining is where they prefer to dine, and the other options were all nominal. Question 5 says, in which area do you regularly shop? And then question 6 said, in which area do you regularly dine out? We see in the center we have Saginaw. That's our shape of our city. And each explosion is an area outside of Saginaw. And participants said that in Saginaw, 13% of their shopping and 16% of their dining is done inside. And so if we look, we see that most participants said that Alliance is where respondents said they do 53% of their shopping and 40% of their dining, and Lake Worth, 31% and 26% of their dining. And then not very many respondents said they shop and dine in the West 7th or downtown Fort Worth area. It came to about 20% total for both those areas. This next question, question 7, said, when you shop outside of Saginaw, what do you usually purchase? And we see that an average respondent spends 85% of their clothing budget outside of Saginaw. 74% of their entertainment and meal budget is being spent outside of Saginaw. 65% of their home furnishing budget is being spent outside of Saginaw. 56% for home furnishings. 50% for electronics and computers. 46% for sporting goods, and then 24% of their budget is being spent outside of Saginaw for grocery items. The next question, question 8, said, what percentage of your annual shopping is done online? And we see by the graph here that between 10 to 15% of their shopping is done online. So the next question, or the next thing that we have here is, these were the key phrases based on the 346 comments that were left, the words and the phrases that came up most often. And we see more variety. So as the phrases and words, the bigger ones are the ones that we're seeing most often. So we did a calculation, and as they get smaller, those are the ones that we're seeing less and less. But you can take those phrases, and we can see what the respondents said that they want, and then we have another section that says what they did not want, and that's what we saw there. And so we can look at this and we can compare it to the other graphs, and you'll see there is some confliction, but it gives us a pretty clear idea of what they want, what they don't want. Then we have the top 10s, and so we have top types of retail that they want. So looking at all the different stores that they put, or the retail options they put on the survey, then we looked and I categorized them by type. And the top 3 were entertainment. They want places to do things and spend time with their family. And the second one was grocery items. And the third one was hobbies. Then we looked at the top restaurant types. And the top 3 were casual dining, as the survey suggests, and then major chains, and then fast casual, Chipotle. And then the last one was top categories of food. New American was number 1, then Cafe Deli, and then Mexican. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Alora. Thank you.
Okay, so the next steps in the immediate future are that the information that was provided in this report, as well as the comments that you received, all of that will be posted online on the city website. Tomorrow it'll be posted on Facebook and social media as well. Just as a note, the comments are all exactly the way that they were given to us, other than if someone just said NA, none, or just a period. We removed those. They have no weight either way. But if they said anything else, that's what's on there. There were a few items that were censored for contact information or foul language. But otherwise, it's exactly the way that it was given to us. We respect the way that people have communicated with us. And so, it's all anonymous. It's not in any specific order, but that will be included in the report and posted online. I think it's beneficial for our community to see what their neighbors are saying they want and don't want, and maybe start that conversation together. We're also going to take a deep dive into the data that we were provided, and again, continue to really see what's feasible in our market. So you'll notice a number of retailers and restaurants on that top 2020 list that realistically wouldn't be feasible for our market, either because of proximity to another location that's similar size, or just the fact that they're not in an expansion mode. Maybe they are a brand that hasn't expanded in a number of years. So we're going to really dig into that and start pulling a little deeper down the list as we start to look at not just what are people asking for, but then what's feasible in our market. We're going to make targeted brand marketing materials. That's really where we pair up the information specific to a retailer that's been requested with sites and specific information about our community, see where those fit, and then really make sure that we tailor a unique message of welcome and invitation to these retailers. And then in the middle of May this year, Stephanie and I both will be gone. We're going to the International Council of Shopping Centers annual conference. It's a chance to get in front of thousands of major retailers from the entire world. And you get to one-on-one meet with these people, pitch your city, talk to them about what their benefits are, and we're going to be sure to target those top 2020 for both of those. We're also going to follow up with recruitment packages. Again, this is in that strategic draft plan. A recruitment package has that key information that's unique to the retailer about why they may be a good fit. It also includes information about our community and why we're a great place that they should consider for their business. And then we continue to follow up. You know, this is building a relationship over time. So, again, in your retail recruitment plan that you have, it has in there sort of the retail recruitment cycle. This is the cycle, exactly what I explained, where we identify the brands, match them up to specific locations, and then market to them. And this is a cycle that we do annually, year after year. So finally, a couple of just in notes. The intention of the survey is we'll conduct it every other year. That gives us time to be able to build trends in the data that we pay attention to and kind of see how are things shifting, but also so that it's recent enough that we can stay on top of kind of what's hip, what's cool now. I just want to stress, you know, to anyone who says, oh my gosh, there's so many retailers and restaurants that were asked for, we're going to have an explosion of all of these places coming to Saginaw. So recruitment success doesn't mean number of new businesses opened. It actually means good fits. So it's not just a numbers game. This is an ongoing process. Like I said, sometimes it takes years and years to really find that perfect fit. It might not be today. It might not be the specific business that was requested. We just keep on trying, building relationships. And then I just also want to say that I cannot even thank enough everyone who participated in the survey. Over 1,000 responses is about the same amount of respondents that I got for any survey of this nature in Flower Mound, which their population is over 73,000. So way to go, Saginaw. You guys definitely made your voices heard. We were shocked at the number we got back. So was Stephanie's statistics professor. So with that, if you'll have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Question for Laura? Cindy?
I have one.
Sure.
This is great information. I actually like the little graphic. That's an enjoyable read. Looking at your 2020 list, you said you're going to this conference in May.
Yes.
And I like a lot of the items that are on this list, but again, I think it will be a challenge to get them here just because of the proximity of other venues in this area. Is this going to be an opportunity to find something comparable but a little different?
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why we don't just ask for brands, but we also really take a look at, okay, underlying it, what is the type of cuisine? What is the type of service level? What are the characteristics that make someone say, I think that would be a great location for us? Because, yeah, you're right. So we're going to have to be looking for comparable.
Except HEB. We got to get an HEB.
There is nothing comparable to HEB. HEB, if you'd like to call me, let me know.
But I would like to see something comparable and different that would make, this area unique.
Yeah, absolutely.
Draw interest here. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
You should get her to
Any other questions? Any other comments?
Just on the marketing data that we're putting together, especially for the events that you guys are going to be attending, what other data points are you going to be feeding into this outside of the survey? I know we were going to be doing traffic counts at one point in time, daytime population, lunch eaters, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or you're collecting that information and putting it into a metrics sheet so these folks can see what we actually have and not just think about what we might have?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So I am a big data person, big data person. So we do have updated traffic counts. I look at zip code analysis. I study leakage reports. And I look at zip codes primarily because a lot of our consumers are coming from the Eagle Mountain Lake area and coming over. It's not necessarily defined to our boundaries. I look at, yes, obviously daytime populations. I'm looking at employers and their hours, especially our industrial core. We have daily between 8,000 and 9,000 employees at any given point over in our industrial area during daytime hours. That's more than healthy, and it's something that I think a lot of people don't know. There's a lot of data that I look at, and it comes down to what's specific for that retailer.
That's good information. And with that being in the industrial core, obviously, the railroads come into play, and being able to traverse them during the lunch hour. 20 minutes is a big chunk of lunch hour time. So potential development within the core, especially food opportunities, even if it's food truck parks, if it's something that can service those folks that are working, the 8,000 to 9,000 employees. Just thinking through what Chili's is not going to want to come and build in the middle of our industrial core. They're going to be looking for pad sites similar to what we're developing north of Walmart. But just thinking through what the demographic, especially what the income levels are of those particular employees, very important information of the daytime population, and getting that information out to these folks that you're going to be recruiting.
Absolutely.
Okay. It'd be nice to see what that recruitment packet looks like.
Sure, absolutely. It's super boring data unless
That's-
you're into it.
Love it.
But I love it. So, yeah, no, I'm happy to share that with you.
Okay.
Again, I try to be very cognizant of what it is retailers need in order to kind of make their own case for business success,
Sure.
and I try to answer that. We're also fortunate with our industrial core that means shift hours, so we have people here at all hours. So 24-hour options tend to look at us a little bit more strongly than a lot of other cities. There's just things like that I think that getting into the mind of the retailers, building those connections, and really finding out what is it that you need that I can make that connection to say that we're the place for you. But
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
I have a comment.
Oh, Mary, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a point that the amount of responses that we got compared to our population, and it also goes along with the Citizen Summit, that our residents do feel a void that needs to be filled. So it's probably obvious, but I wanted to state that.
Thank you.
All right. Laura, thank you. Stephanie, thank you very much for your hard work. Appreciate that. Item number 15, fiscal year 20 budget discussion, employee compensation. For that, City Manager Gabe Braham.
Mayor, we just have a few slides this evening. We're going to go through them. The intent, as with our previous workshop items related to the budget, is to get information for your review early. We'll continue to refine these as we go along and we get to decision time in the summer. Kim will handle the next slide, but would like to emphasize that these are all very preliminary numbers, and as information becomes available in the future, they will change. So with that, turn it over to Kim.
As Gabe just mentioned, these are just preliminary numbers to get you starting thinking of what we're looking at in the coming budget cycle. As you know, we approved the increase in TMRS that started January. So we have a roll-up cost, and what I mean by that is we funded the 7% for 9 months. It started in January. This next fiscal year, it will be for the full 12 months. So we have that roll-up cost related to the TMRS increase, as well as I took a stab at estimating what that rate will be. So it changes slightly from year to year. TMRS has actuaries that figure out what rate is required for us to fund the benefits, and it has to do with the age of our employees, as people leave, as people come on that may already be members of TMRS. So there's a lot of variables. They can't tell us exactly what that rate is until midsummer. We'll know exactly what the rate is for next January. So there are estimates there as far as general fund and enterprise fund. The funding for the TMRS increase for next year, will be partially offset by our one-time 1% increase that we gave employees to offset so they wouldn't see a decrease since there were no salary adjustments in this year's current budget. So that's the net cost there. It's too early to know what our health insurance rates are going to be. We did not have an increase this year, so it's safe to assume that we will have an increase next year. But again, we don't know. Just to give you an idea, that's the estimated cost for approximately a 10% increase. But again, it's just a rough estimate at this point. It's nothing that our insurance consultant has given us yet. And then we were asked to break out a possible salary adjustment to cost of living and a possible merit pool. So a 2% cost of living to the general fund is about $207,000. A 1% merit pool would be approximately $100,000. Those are based on current employee salaries.
So we did not give a cost of living adjustment this last budget.
There was no salary adjustment. We did do beginning January 1st. We called it a one-time. So the salaries of our employees did not get permanently adjusted. We just adjusted it by that 1% that they would have seen a reduction in their salary. So when we increased by 1%, the city's share went up as well as the employee's share, and we're covering the employee's share for this 9 months only.
All right, so my question is, when was the last time we gave a cost of living adjustment?
We had a cost of living adjustment in 17, 18. Well, it wasn't a cost of living adjustment, but we approved the new pay plan, and most employees received an adjustment based on that.
Let's get to the midpoint, essentially. That was an adjustment that we did.
Well, we
kind of got rid of
we
the
got
midpoint.
everybody up to the minimum, and if I recall, 3%.
Okay.
Just one comment, Mayor and Council. There was a salary study that was conducted and prepared prior to my joining the city. Our competition, and we're in a competitive marketplace for good people, just like any employer. Our competition happens to be other public service providers, other cities. So, as a matter of practice, it's good to look at our salary plan every year. The next few slides are a couple areas that staff will continue to have ongoing discussions regarding our market competitiveness, especially in our three largest departments, police, fire, public works.
Yeah, just before we move off this, I want to make sure that I understand this. The total of these would represent our best guess at the salary adjustment, the potential impact on insurance, and the TMRS, whatever that algorithm works out to be. That total, just so I calculated at $495,000, an increase of ongoing expenses in the general fund alone, not the enterprise fund. So
That is the total of these estimates for the general fund.
So that is essentially an 8.6% increase of general fund ongoing expenses over this year's revenue, just here, captured here. Okay.
That's correct.
Mayor, I have a question. I've been fortunate enough to sit in on the Saginaw Citizen Police Academy classes. One of the items that was brought up at the last class was about was Officer McDonald, or Corporal McDonald, with the mental health. She's a mental health peace officer. One of the things that she talked about that the officers, and I'm sure the fire department goes through as well, is a lot of mental stress, and that the insurance policies that we have in place a lot of times really don't benefit the officers and fire personnel. And I was wondering if there's any way that we could look at maybe a supplemental package for employee assistance programs, maybe something that they could pay for, since they're not having to pay out of pocket for additional assistance that they may need.
can come back with that information. I believe we do have some EAP program currently available, but we can get you more information.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, is the ask potentially that this entire amount come from new tax dollars?
Not necessarily. We will have growth with new valuation for new property as well as increase in existing property. But my priority with this budget this year is to take care of employees with salaries. We made a pretty substantial change last year. If we don't do something in the way of a increase, that people would be looking at a pay cut. So the other driver in our general fund is sales tax. So, to say the funds are an entire bucket, whatever the split is at this moment, property tax and sales tax in the general fund, what are off the top of your head? Well, just at the fund level, what the percentage?
40-60?
Approximately, yeah. I mean, it's higher. Lately, we've had higher sales tax.
That's because Alora's here.
It's going to adjust, yeah. But it's true. It wouldn't be just property tax funding it.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're talking about, as we're going through this, what the thought is in terms of source, not just use.
Sure.
Okay.
I won't read these bullet points, but kind of some background on why we need to examine compensation. Already mentioned citywide, the salary study we are currently operating under is approximately 2 years old. We're going to examine some positions to make sure that there's market competitiveness. I mentioned this at our workshop in March, that there are some certificate pays that aren't necessarily related to base salary that are important to factor in, especially in the Public Works Department, as well as training opportunities. Sometimes if we can't reasonably compete in the market on a base salary, we can offer experiences and training to employees as a recruitment tool or a retention tool to keep them with us. There's a memo in your packet that Chief Howell put together. This is a graph that describes some of the things in that memo, and I will turn it over to him to kind of talk through a couple of these things.
We did a salary survey on current salaries and on about 15 different agencies that we compete directly with.
Chief, is your mic on?
Oh.
All right, thank you.
Oh. We narrowed it down to these agencies that are somewhat close to us in population. The ones that are larger, we certainly compete with. The police department market, as well as the fire department and several others, but particularly in law enforcement, we're suffering the last many years from a very highly competitive market. Applications are down somewhere in the order of 60 to 75% in almost every agency in the Metroplex. There's a greater turnover right now than has been for the last several years than in previous years. And there's a number of factors that have created higher pay in some of the larger tax-based agencies and cities that have created a wider disparity between larger cities, or for the lack of a better term, richer cities, and smaller ones with less tax base. There's things like step plans and incentive pays. Certified officers are being fought over with bonuses and lateral transfer programs. So I've never seen in my career the market as competitive as it is right now, and there being that big of a disparity, say, between the city of Fort Worth, for instance, and a city our size. So I think, according to our salary comparison of those cities that we came up with, we're somewhere between 3 to 11% lower than the market average of those cities, and depending on the the position. For instance, with our starting salary, if we could get that up in the neighborhood of around $56,000, where it's currently at $53,649. We can get it somewhere around 56. It brings us close to the current market average in starting salary, and then a similar mathematical formula up the chain would bring us closer to market competitive again. But we're definitely behind, and I think the plan that hopefully we'll come up with that would improve that, we can come up with some better details on. But that's an overview of what we've done in terms of just the police market.
So, Gabe, just so I understand this, any adjustments here would be in addition to the $495 that we just talked about.
Let's say, and we would work this on a case-by-case basis, let's say that we adjust the starting salary to some higher amount. We would definitely have to bring everybody up that wasn't at starting salary to starting salary.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think we would look at tenure and maybe past practice, so I don't know that we'd necessarily adjust a merit on top if somebody was below that starting salary, but it would certainly factor in. One thing I'd like to note that may not necessarily have a dollar cost now, but for purposes of recruitment, noting a higher ceiling in the different job classifications, the ranges. So when applicants in a competitive market see the top end, if the top end's higher in one agency than another, that's a competitive advantage. The reality for us that that may not cost us any money to recognize a higher top-out salary within a range. It just shows an employee or a potential new employee where they could go.
And then so the $495 we're talking about is essentially it is a city-wide adjustment, and what we're talking about now is a completely different area that is making the police department more a more marketable department in the region for recruitment.
Market competitive, yeah.
Yeah, so market competitive, that's what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a number in mind right now that's, Chief, do you have a number? Is there a number at all that you have in mind?
Like a total number?
You're referring to a total number of dollars
Yes.
to do this?
That you would need to kind of adjust what you have in terms of a pool of dollars to throw at this. I hate to use the term, but we're trying to make our department market competitive. What's the dollar?
And no, sir, I haven't really figured that up in that way. I've just looked at it in terms of percentages.
Okay. At some point in the future, in this process, we'll see something?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. We have I think there's one patrol vacancy now. We anticipate, part of being a desirable agency, unfortunately, is we lose people to other agencies, and that's happened recently. So, but I understand your request.
Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, Chief Howell? Hi. Have you done a comparison of our benefits package with other communities that are listed?
Yes, I don't have it outlined here, but in that regard, the benefits, especially since we've gone to the 2-to-1 match with retirement, is very competitive, I would say, in most places. Where we fall a little bit short is in those incentives that are add-ons to the basic salary and benefits. But in terms of the insurance, the retirement, and the retirement match, and vacation time, sick time, all those kind of things, we're very competitive with that portion of it.
Thank you.
I have one question. Isn't it, out of all these cities that you looked at, isn't Saginaw more I don't know, not as responsive, I guess, as the bigger cities, it's not as.
Responsive? That's not the word you're looking
Not
for.
responsive, but
Dangerous is the word you're looking for.
Dangerous, I guess you'd
Right?
say. So isn't that some kind of, doesn't that play in there somewhere that it's more like a, you know what I'm saying? It's not as dangerous as the bigger cities?
We have a safe city. There's no doubt about that, and a relatively low crime rate. I think I saw something the other day that came out with a private company had come out with a top 100 safest cities, and we're in that group somewhere around number 40 something, I think, which is not bad at all.
Right.
Again, we're not so far under the potential of crime or the crime rate of this general area being completely surrounded by Fort Worth and the metropolitan area. We can have wide spikes with very low numbers in our city that could really skew that crime rate. But certainly it is the pace per person in terms of call loads and that kind of thing is not necessarily lower, but the types of offenses that we handle on a daily basis is a little bit different. That's correct.
So darn that suburb again.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment? One other important thing to factor, it's a common topic of discussion at the fire chiefs meetings. I'm sure it's at the police chief meetings as well. There's far fewer people seeking the profession of firefighter and police officer, which is a big drive on the market rate salaries also. So that's an important factor to consider. We are in the same boat as the police department, fighting for a small group of high quality individuals. We don't want to lower our standards to the people that we add to our department. It's become really challenging. So both departments in that aspect have some challenges that we have to meet and find the people to do the job.
If I could just too briefly add a couple of things in response to Chief Spears' comments. One thing, there's surveys done, and again, there's the applicant pools to start with have diminished since about 2013-14 to about 25 to 30% of what they were at the time. And then turnover is much higher. I saw a survey that was done, a nationwide survey, but it said that a very high percentage of people coming into public service are not staying in the job more than about 4 to 5 years. So the turnover rate there is considerable. And then in this particular market, and I saw you nod when I was talking about this a while ago, there has become a real strong emphasis on trying to grab people who have some experience, and they're paying more, agencies are paying more. And our department in particular lost a lot of our experience about 3 years ago. A big portion of our officers that are tenured from, say, the 8 to 12 to 15 year experience range left. And so we have an average, the average tenure of our patrol officer right now is about 3 years with Saginaw, which is very, very low. Now, some of those folks have some experience in other agencies, but when you look at a 3-year average just with this agency, that's extremely low, really, even for a small agency. So, when we were discussing adjusting the range of salaries to become more competitive into the future, and then initially on paper when people are looking at making a decision of where to go, where to hire onto or apply, that top end range, like Gabe said, is important. And that's one of the places where we're about $10,000 to $12,000 lower than the average is on that top end. By adjusting that up, it's not that portion of an adjustment wouldn't create a huge monetary burden because of our low tenure. So we're not going to have a lot of people that are going to reach that level, that top-out pay, for quite some time. But that was just something else I neglected to mention a while ago.
Let's keep moving.
Yeah, so just one note, and there's, Chief Spears could speak to this, there's some recruitment literature from other cities related to fire. So the fire department is experiencing a lot of change due to retirements. I had the opportunity to meet our 3 newest firefighters, 2 of which are firefighter paramedics, which we got incredibly lucky to compete. It's an in-demand position. One was an EMT because we couldn't recruit a 3rd paramedic, and Chief Spears could tell you more about that.
Yeah, I believe most of y'all met our 3 new recruits. We initially had an application period at the end of last year, trying to stay paramedic only, which is what we've done in my tenure here. We didn't have enough. There was not really one hireable applicant out of the 6 applicants we got. So we had to repost the position. We opened it up to EMTs. We eventually filled one of our positions with an EMT because there wasn't enough qualified paramedic applicants. So it is a struggle finding paramedics that we need. One of our new employees came with some experience. We were very fortunate to steal them away from another city. I attribute a lot of that to our reputation because the person was in the running and had two more offers at other cities, and he turned them down to come to our city strictly on reputation. But that's not going to be enough to carry us as we go forward getting employees. As great as we are, that reputation is not going to be enough. So we're going to continue to struggle unless we really get competitive in the market and can steal some people away or lure them to Saginaw versus some other cities.
So just to wrap up, I want to emphasize too that we've talked about public safety the most, but I'll put Larry Little on the spot. Don't need to speak, Larry. Thanks for coming. Building inspections in a hot construction market. Larry could go be a private inspector tomorrow for a private company.
Whoa, don't give me any ideas, Gabe. What are you doing? Whoa.
He's committed to staying the next 20 years. No, I just made that up. But I want to emphasize that this is a citywide look, right? And we have a responsibility to bring you information based on what the market's given us, and we'll fall somewhere in the middle with what we can afford and what's reasonable. So our intent is to bring back information to you and recommendations in the future. The final note would be just a follow-up, and we don't necessarily need to talk more tonight. We mentioned briefly at our last meeting about talking about potential support of nonprofits, which has been a past practice of the city in the grand scheme of the city's overall adopted budget. A very small amount, a few thousand per organization or organizations. We can get your feedback tonight, or you can let us know going in the forward, but that really concludes our presentation.
Council, any feedback? Mary?
2 things. One, I just wanted to ask Chief Spears, is your new EMT, will he be required to become a paramedic or not?
We didn't put that stipulation on his employment, but we did promote that we would want them to seek getting their paramedic certification, and certainly that was one of the caveats to hiring this particular gentleman. He does want to pursue becoming a paramedic.
And there's an incentive financially for him to do that, correct?
There is.
Yeah.
And then on this slide up here, just my recommendations, and other people might have other ideas, are to donate to Meals on Wheels of Tarrant County and the scholarships for the school district and
Community Link.
Community Link.
Yeah.
So those are the 3
we-
that I
we-
had thought
yeah.
of that would be appropriate.
I think
We
it's
do and we will.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think that if we just come up with a policy, I think that would be helpful. If we just had a policy so this is our policy.
Consistency.
Yes. And I would suggest that maybe what do you call that monkey thing? Yeah.
What?
The Survey Monkey.
Oh, Survey Monkey.
Monkey tank.
Like part of the policy
Yeah.
would be
Ask the citizens.
a one in this budget cycle. If these were the 10 charitable organizations that you feel, then let the Survey Monkey jump around out there and figure out what he can deliver. Right? Okay. Make sure that the IP addresses are different, though.
And we also discussed in the past wanting to relook at what we give to the chamber every year as well. I'd want to put that on that list as well to see about upping that. We've had that discussion before. I think we want to revisit that. Keeping in mind, though, dollars may be tight this year based on whatever the legislature does to us, so that's got to keep that as an overriding theme that we have no control over. So that was something will evolve over time.
And we can always ask the taxpayers.
We can ask.
We can always ask the taxpayers. It's always an option.
All right, so Gabe, anything else? All right, so at 8:30, we reconvene back into regular session. Item 17, executive session. So pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.087, we will leave to go to evaluate potential incentive offer options for restaurant and/or entertainment use. So at 8:31, we're in executive session. We will return to adjourn.
I did see that in my